Good evening. This is Yosei Sakura. My avatar is really messed up, so I need you to hold on for just a second while I fix this. Okay, there we go. Now she's not all twisted. Sorry about that, folks. Now, tonight, as it said in my posts earlier, I'm going to be reading some Japanese myths and legends from Japanese folklore. Now, tonight's reading will be about animal myths and legends from Japanese lore. Animals such as cats, badgers, foxes are all known for their mischief in this lore, as well as they're also rewarding any humans who do good deeds for them or show them any kind of a kindness. Animals in Japanese folklore were meant to act as vehicles for didactic messages. And all that means, simply put, is messages that were meant to teach or instruct, kind of like our fairy tales, okay, on the English side, because we have fairy tales that teach you different things, and that's what a lot of this Japanese folklore was also meant to do. And it also represents a lot of their culture with their deities. Now, and these were originally read to young people for this very reason, to instill proper morals and beliefs for their culture. And it was read to them by parents or family members, maybe even their grandparents. And then it just got passed down from generation to generation. Some of them were really fascinating. I will be reading a few tonight because the ones that I read in the book that I own on the subject, they're not really long, but I figured that it might be nice just as a change of pace so that we could have something different and so that we could learn something about another culture. And as everyone who's been to my streams knows, I am very enamored with the Japanese culture. Now, the first one is called the Death Stone. And there's a poem that starts first before the actual tale. The Death Stone stands on Nasu's moor. Through winter snows and summer heat, the moss grows gray upon its sides, but the foul demon haunts it yet. Chill blows the blast, the owl's sad choir hoots hoarsely through the morning pines. Among the low chrysanthemums, the skulking fox, the jackal whines. And o'er the moor, the autumn light declines. Now the Buddhist priest Geno, after much weary travel, came to the moor of Nasu and was about to rest under the shadow of a great stone, when a spirit suddenly appeared and said, "Rest not under this stone. This is the Death Stone. Men, birds, and beasts have perished by merely touching it." These mysterious and warning remarks awakened Geno's curiosity, and he begged that the spirit would favor him with the story of the Death Stone. these mysterious and warming remarks. Thus the spirit began. Long ago, there was a fair girl living at the Japanese court. She was so charming that she was called the Jewel Maiden. Her wisdom equaled her beauty, for she understood Buddhist lore and the Confucian classics, science, and the poetry of China. One night, went on the spirit, the Mikado gave a great feast in the summer palace. And there he assembled the wit, wisdom, and beauty of the land. It was a brilliant gathering, but while the company ate and drank, accompanied by the strains of sweet music, darkness crept over the great apartment. Black clouds raced across the sky, and there was not a star to be seen. While the guests sat rigid with fear, a mysterious wind arose. It howled through the summer palace and blew out all the lanterns. The complete darkness produced a state of panic, and during the uproar, someone cried out, "A light! A light!" And lo, from out the Jewel Maiden's frame, there seemed to dart a weirdly lustrous flame. It grows, it spreads, it fills the imperial halls, the painted screens, the costly paneled walls. Erst the pale, viewless damask of night, sparkling, stand forth as in the moon's full light. From that very hour, the Mikado sickened, continued the spirit. He grew so ill that the court magician was sent for, and this worthy soul speedily ascertained the cause of His Majesty's decline. He stated with much warmth of language that the Jewel Maiden was a harlot and a fiend, who with insidious art, the state to ravage, captivated thy heart. The magician's words turned the Mikado's heart against the Jewel Maiden. When this sorceress was spurned, she resumed her original shape, that of a fox, and ran away to this very stone on the Nasu Moor. The priest looked at the spirit critically. "Who are you?" he said at length. "I am the demon that once dwelt in the breast of the Jewel Maiden. Now I inhabit the Death Stone forevermore." The good Geno was much horrified by this dreadful confession, but remembering his duty as a priest, he said, "Though you have sunk low in wickedness, you shall rise to virtue again. Take this priestly robe and begging bowl, and reveal to me your fox form." Then this wicked spirit cried pitifully, "In the garish light of day, I hide myself away. Like pale Osama's fires, with the night I'll come again. Confess my guilt with pain and newborn pure desires." With these words, the spirit suddenly vanished. Geno could not relinquish his good intentions. He strove more ardently than ever for this erring soul's salvation, in order that she might attain nirvana. He offered flowers, burnt incense, and recited sacred scriptures in front of the stone. When Geno had performed these religious duties, he said, "Spirit of the Death Stone, I conjure thee, What was it in a former world that did cause thee to assume in this so foul a shape? Suddenly the death stone was rent, and the spirit once more appeared crying. In stones there are spirits, in the waters is a voice heard. The winds sweep across the firmament. Gene saw a lurid glare about him, and in the shining light, a fox that suddenly turned into a beautiful maiden. Thus spoke Spirit of the Death Stone. I am she who first in Ind was the demon to whom Prince Hazoku paid homage. In Great Cathay I took the form of Hoji, consort of the Emperor Uwao. And at the court of the rising sun, I became the flawless jewel maiden, concubine to the Emperor Toba. The spirit confessed to Geno that in the form of the jewel maiden, she had desired to bring destruction to the imperial line. Already, said the spirit, I was making my plans. Already I was gloating over the thought of the Mikado's death. And had it not been for the power of the court magician, I should have succeeded in my scheme. As I have told you, I was driven from the court. I was pursued by dogs and arrows, and finally sank, exhausted, into the death stone. From time to time, I haunted the moor. Now the Lord Buddha has had compassion upon me, and he has sent his priests to point out the way of true religion and to bring peace. The legend concludes with the following pious utterances poured forth by the now contrite spirit. I swear, O men of God, I swear, she cries, to thee whose blessing wafts me to the skies. I swear a solemn oath that shall endure, firm as the death stone standing on the moor, that from this hour I'm virtue child alone. Thus sparked the ghoul and vanished neath the stone. Now these can be very complicated, but I think that what this story is trying to point out is that no matter how many mistakes you've made, that there is always a path to redemption. If you own up to your mistakes and you try to do better. Now, the next one is entitled, How a Man Was Bewitched and Had His Head Shaved by Foxes. In the village of Iwahara, in the province of Shinshu, there dwelt a family which had acquired considerable wealth in the wine trade. On some auspicious occasion, it happened that a number of guests were gathered together at their house, feasting on wine and fish. And as the wine cup went around, the conversation turned upon foxes. Among the guests was a certain carpenter, Tokotaro by name, a man about 30 years of age, of a stubborn and obstinate turn, who said, Well, sirs, you've been talking for some time of men being bewitched by foxes. Surely you must be under their influence yourselves to say such things. How on earth can foxes have such power over men? At any rate, men must be great fools to be so deluded. Let's have no more of this nonsense. Upon this man, who was sitting by him, answered, Tokotaru little knows what goes on in the world, or he would not speak so. How many myriads of men are there who have been bewitched by foxes? Why, there have been at least 20 or 30 men tricked by the brutes on the Maki Moor alone. It's hard to disprove facts that have happened before our eyes. You're no better than a pack of born idiots, said Tokotaru. I will engage to go out on the Maki Moor this very night and prove it. There is not a fox in all Japan that can make a fool of Tokotaru. Thus he spoke in his pride, but the others were all angry with him for boasting and said, If you return without anything having happened, we will pay for 5 measures of wine and 1,000 copper cash worth of fish. And if you are bewitched, you shall do as much for us. Tokotaru took the bet, and at nightfall set forth for the Maki Moor by himself. As he neared the moor, he saw before him a small bamboo grove, in which a fox ran, and it instantly occurred to him that the foxes of the moor would try to bewitch him. As he was yet looking, he suddenly saw the daughter of a headman of the village of Upper Horikane, who was married to the headman of the village of Maki. Pray, where are you going to, Master Tokotaru? Said she. I am going to the village hard by. Then, as you will have to pass my native place, if you will allow me, I will accompany you so far. Tokotaru thought this very odd, and made up his mind that it was a fox trying to make a fool of him. He accordingly determined to turn the tables on the fox and answered, It is a long time since I have had the pleasure of seeing you, and as it seems your house is on my road, I shall be glad to escort you so far. With this he walked behind her, thinking he should certainly see the end of a fox's tail peeping out. But look as he might, there was nothing to be seen. At last they came to the village of Upper Horikane. And when they reached the cottage of the girl's father, the family all came out, surprised to see her. Oh dear, here is our daughter, come! I hope there is nothing the matter. And so they went on for some time, asking a string of questions. In the meantime, Tokotaru went round to the kitchen door and the back of the house, and beckoning out the master of the house, said, The girl who has come with me is not really your daughter. As I was going to the Maki Moor, when I arrived at the bamboo grove, a fox jumped up in front of me. And when it had dashed into the grove, it immediately took the shape of your daughter and offered to accompany me to the village. So I pretended to be taken in by the brute and came with it so far. On hearing this, the master of the house put his head on one side and mused for a while. Then, calling his wife, he repeated the story to her in a whisper. But she flew into a great rage with Tokotaru and said, This is a pretty way of insulting people's daughters. This girl is our daughter, and there's no mistake about it. How dare you invent such lies? Well, said Tokotaru, you are quite right to say so, but still there is no doubt that this is a case of witchcraft. Seeing how obstinately he held to his opinion, the old folks were sorely perplexed and said, What do you think of doing? Pray leave the matter to me. I'll soon strip that false skin off and show the beast to you in its true colors. Do you two go into the store closet and wait there. With this, he went into the kitchen and, seizing the girl by the back of the neck, forced her down by the hearth. "Oh, Master Tokotaru, what means this brutal violence? Mother, father, help!" So the girl cried and screamed. But Tokotaru only laughed and said, "So you thought to bewitch me, did you? From the moment you jumped into the wood, I was on the lookout for you to play me some trick. I'll soon make you show what you really are." And as he said this, he twisted her two hands behind her back and trod upon her and tortured her. But she only wept and cried, "Oh, it hurts! It hurts! If this is not enough to make you show your true form, I'll roast you to death." And he piled firewood on the hearth and tucked up her dress, scorched her severely. "Oh, oh, this is more than I can bear," and with this she expired. The two old people then came running in from the rear of the house, and pushing aside Tokotaru, folded their daughter in their arms, and put their hands to their mouth to fear whether she still breathed. But life was extinct, and not the sign of a fox's tail was to be seen about her. Then they seized Tokotaru by the collar and cried, "On pretense that our true daughter was a fox, you have roasted her to death. Murderer! Here, you there, bring ropes and cords and secure this Tokotaru." So the servants obeyed, and several of them seized Tokotaru and bound him to a pillar. Then the master of the house, turning to Tokotaru, said, "You have murdered our daughter before our very eyes. I shall report the matter to the lord of the manor, and you will surely pay for this with your head. Be prepared for the worst." And as he said this, glaring fiercely at Tokotaru, they carried the corpse of his daughter into the store closet. As they were sending to make the matter known in the village of Maki, and taking other measures, who should come up but the priest of the temple, called Anrakuji, in the village of Awahara, with an acolyte and a servant, who called out in a loud voice from the front door, "Is all well with the honorable master of this house? I have been to say prayers today in a neighboring village, and on my way back I could not pass the door without at least inquiring after your welfare. If you are at home, I would fain pay my respects to you." As he spoke thus in a loud voice, he was heard from the back of the house, and the master got up and went out, and after the usual compliments on meeting had been exchanged, said, "I ought to have the honor of inviting you to step inside this evening, but really we are all in greatest trouble, and I must beg you to excuse my impoliteness." "Indeed, pray, what may be the matter?" replied the priest. And when the master of the house had told the whole story from beginning to end, he was thunderstruck and said, "Truly, this must be a terrible distress to you." Then the priest looked on side and saw Tokotaru bound, and exclaimed, "Is that Tokotaru that I see there?" "Oh, your reverence," replied Tokotaru piously, "it was this, that, and the other, and I took it into my head that the young lady was a fox, and so I killed her. But I pray your reverence to intercede for me and save my life." And as he spoke, the tears started from his eyes. "To be sure," said the priest, "you may well bewail yourself. However, if I save your life, will you consent to become my disciple and enter the priesthood? Only save my life and I'll become your disciple with all my heart." When the priest heard this, he called out the parents and said to them, "It would seem that though I am but a foolish old priest, my coming here today has been unusually well timed. I have a request to make of you. Your putting Tokotaru to death won't bring your daughter to life again. I have heard his story, And there certainly was no malice prepense on his part to kill your daughter. What he did thinking to do a service to your family. And it would surely be better to hush the matter up. He wishes, moreover, to give himself over to me and to become my disciple. It is as you say, replied the father and mother, speaking together. Revenge will not recall our daughter. Please dispel our grief by shaving his head and making a priest of him on the spot. I'll shave him at once, before your eyes, answered the priest, who immediately caused the cords which bound Tokutaro to be untied, and putting on his priest's scarf, made him join his hands together in a posture of prayer. Then the reverend man stood behind him, razor in hand, and intoning a hymn, gave 2 or 3 strokes of the razor, which he then handed to his acolyte, who made a clean shave of Tokutaro's head. When the latter had finished his obeisance to the priest and the ceremony was over, there was a loud burst of laughter. At the same moment the day broke, and Tokutaro found himself alone in the middle of a large moor. At first, in his surprise, he thought that it was all a dream, and was much annoyed at having been tricked by the foxes. He then passed his hand over his head and found that he was shaved quite bald. There was nothing for it but to get up, wrap a handkerchief around his head, and go back to the place where his friends were assembled. Hello, Tokutaro. So you've come back. Well, how about the foxes? Really, gentlemen, replied he, bowing. I am quite ashamed to appear before you. Then he told them the whole story, and when he had finished, pulled off the handkerchief and showed his bald pate. What a capital joke, shouted his listeners, and amid roars of laughter, claimed the bet of fish and wine. It was duly paid, but Tokutaro never allowed his hair to grow again, and renounced the world and became a priest under the name of Seinen. That was a really interesting story. Does anyone have any comments about it or any ideas as to exactly what that story is trying to impart on us? Maybe not to judge others. So how is everybody doing? I hope everybody's having a good night. Now I've got another one called The Fox's Wedding. Once upon a time, there was a young white fox whose name was Fukiyoman. When he had reached the fitting age, he shaved off his forelock and began to think of taking himself a beautiful bride. The old fox, his father, resolved to give up his inheritance to his son and retired into private life. So the young fox, in gratitude for this, labored hard and earnestly to increase his patrimony. Now it happened that in a famous old family of foxes, there was a beautiful young lady fox with such lovely fur that fame of her jewel-like charms was spread far and wide. The young white fox, who had heard of this, was bent on making her his wife, and a meeting was arranged between them. There was not a fault to be found on either side. So the preliminaries were settled, and the wedding presents sent from the bridegroom to the bride's house, with congratulatory speeches from the messenger, which were duly acknowledged by the person deputed to receive the gifts. The bearers, of course, received the customary fee in copper cash. When the ceremonies had been concluded, an auspicious day was chosen for the bride to go to her husband's house, and she was carried off in solemn procession during a shower of rain, the sun shining all the while. After the ceremonies of drinking wine had been gone through, the bride changed her dress, and the wedding was concluded, without let or hindrance, amid singing and dancing and merrymaking. The bride and bridegroom lived lovingly together, and a litter of little foxes were born to them, to the great joy of the old grandsire, who treated the little cubs as tenderly as if they had been butterflies or flowers. "They're the very image of their old grandfather," he said, as proud as possible. "As for medicine, bless them, they're so healthy, and they'll never need a copper coin's worth." As soon as they were old enough, they were carried off to the temple in Inadi-sama, the patron saint of foxes, and the old grandparents prayed that they might be delivered from dogs and all other ills to which fox flesh is heir. In this way, the white fox, by degrees, waxed old and prosperous, and his children, year by year, became more and more numerous around him, so that happy in his family and his business, every recurring spirit brought him fresh cause for joy. Now that's a wonderful story about how you can have such a wonderful relationship with your spouse or your significant other and with your in-laws. That's just beautiful. Let me see. I wanted to read a few more to you tonight. This won't be as long a stream as other ones, but I do want to read some more to you. This one is called The Crackling Mountain. An old man and his wife kept a white hare. One day a badger came and ate the food provided for the pet. The mischievous animal was about to scamper away when the old man, seeing what had taken place, tied the badger to a tree and then went to a neighboring mountain to cut wood. When the old man had gone on his journey, the badger began to weep and to beg that the old woman would untie the rope. She had no sooner done so than the badger proclaimed vengeance and ran away. When the good white hare heard what had taken place, he set out to warn his master. But during his absence, the badger returned, killed the old woman, assumed her form, and converted her corpse into broth. "I have made such excellent broth," said the badger, when the old man returned from the mountain. "You must be hungry and tired. Pray sit down and make a good meal." The old man, not suspecting treachery of any kind, consumed the broth and pronounced it excellent. "Excellent?" sneered the badger. "You have eaten your wife. Her bones lie over there in the corner." And with these words he disappeared. While the old man was overcome with sorrow, and while he wept and bewailed his fate, the hare returned, grasped the situation, and scampered off to the mountain, fully resolved to avenge the death of his poor old mistress. When the hare reached the mountain, he saw the badger carrying a bundle of sticks on his back. Softly the hare crept up and, unobserved, set light to the sticks, which began to crackle immediately. "This is a strange noise," said the badger. "What is it?" "The crackling mountain," replied the hare. The fire began to burn the badger, so he sprang into a river and extinguished the flames. But on getting out again, he found that his back was severely burned, and the pain he suffered was increased by cayenne poultice, which the delighted hare provided for that purpose. When the badger was well again, he chanced to see the hare standing by a boat he had made. "Where are you going in that vessel?" inquired the badger. "To the moon," replied the hare. "Perhaps you would like to come with me." "Not in your boat," said the badger. "I know too well your tricks on the crackling mountain. But I will build a boat of clay for myself, and we will journey to the moon." Down the river went the wooden boat of the hare and the clay boat of the badger. Presently, the badger's vessel began to come to pieces. The hare laughed derisively and killed his enemy with his oar. Later on, when the loyal animal returned to the old man, he justly received much praise and loving care from his grateful master. Now that badger was not nice, but the old man also plays a part in some of this, because yes, what the badger did was wrong because he ate the pet's food, but did it warrant him being tied to a tree and left there? No. And it shows how evil begets evil. How when you just look to get even with someone for something that has been done to you, no good can come of that. Now this one is called The Fox and the Badger. Just one moment though, I just have to get a sip of my tea. Okay. The Fox and the Badger. There is a certain mountainous district in Shikoku, in which a skillful hunter had trapped or shot so many foxes and badgers that only a few were left. These were an old gray badger and a female fox with one cub. Though hard pressed by hunger, neither dared to touch a loose piece of food, lest a trap might be hidden under it. Excuse me. Indeed, they scarcely stirred out of their holes except at night, lest the hunter's arrow should strike them. At last, the two animals held a council together to decide what to do, whether to emigrate or to attempt to outwit their enemy. They thought a long while, when finally the badger, having hit upon a good plan, cried out, "I have it! Do you transform yourself into a man? I'll pretend to be dead. Then you can bind me up and sell me in the town. With the money paid, you can buy some food. Then I'll get loose and come back. The next week, I'll sell you and you can escape. Ha ha ha! Yoroshu, meaning good, good." "It's a capital plan," said Mrs. Fox. So the fox changed herself into a human form, and the badger, pretending to be dead, was tied up with straw ropes. Slinging him over her shoulders, the fox went to town, sold the badger, and buying a lot of tofu, which is like bean curd, bean cheese, and 1 or 2 chickens, made a feast. By this time, the badger had got loose, for the man for whom he was sold, thinking him dead, had not watched him carefully. So scampering away to the mountains, he met the fox, who congratulated him, while both feasted merrily. The next week, the badger took human form, and going to town, sold the fox, who made believe to be dead. But the badger, being an old skinflint and very greedy, wanted all the money and food for himself. So he whispered in the man's ear to watch the fox well, as she was only feigning to be dead. So the man, taking a club, gave the fox a blow on the head, which finished her. The badger, buying a good dinner, ate it all himself and licked his chops, never even thinking of the fox's cub. The cub, after waiting a long time for its mother to come back, suspected foul play. And the cub resolved on revenge. So going to the badger, he challenged him to a trial of skill in the art of transformation. The badger accepted right off, for he despised the cub and wished to be rid of him. "Well, what do you want to do first?" said Sir Badger. "I propose that you go and stand on the big bridge leading to the city," said the cub, "and wait for my appearance. I shall come in splendid garments and with many followers in my train. If you recognize me, you win, and I lose. If you fail, I win." So the badger went and waited behind a tree. Soon Adamo, riding a palanquin with a splendid amount of courtiers, appeared, coming up the road. Thinking this was the fox cub changed into a nobleman, although wondering at the skill of the young fox, the badger went up to the palanquin and told the person inside that he was recognized and he had lost the game. "What?" said the Damo's followers, who were real men and surrounding the badger. They beat him to death. The fox cub, who was looking on from a hill nearby, laughed in derision and glad the treachery was punished, and scampered away. Now, although what the fox cub did was not right, because vengeance is never the answer, I do understand what would happen. I mean, how he could feel that way. But again, vengeance is never the answer. So, does anybody have anything special maybe that they would like read about a certain animal? Or if not, I have one that might be interesting. Okay, now this one might be the last one for tonight, but again, it's just to give you some insight into what Japanese folklore is about and some of the stories that are passed down and read. Let me see if I can find a really good one. Okay, now this is how Yoritomo was saved by 2 doves. Yoritomo, having been defeated in battle, against Oba, Kagechika was forced to retreat with 6 of his followers. They ran with all speed through a forest and, finding a large hollow tree, crept inside for shelter. In the meantime, Oba Kagechika said to his cousins, Oba Kagetoki, go and search for Yoritomo, for I have good reason to believe that he lies hidden in this forest. I will so arrange my men that the flight of our enemy will be impossible. Oba Kagetoki departed, none too pleased with the mission, for he had once been on friendly terms with Yoritomo. When he reached the hollow tree and saw through a hole in the trunk that his old friend lay concealed within, he took pity on him and returned to his cousin, saying, I believe that Yoritomo, our enemy, is not in this wood. When Oba Kagechika heard these words, he cried fiercely, You lie! How could Yoritomo make his escape so soon, and with my men standing on guard about the forest? Lead the way, and I and some of my men will follow you. No cunning this time, cousin, or you shall severely suffer for it. In due time, the party reached the hollow tree, and Kagechika was about to enter it when his cousin cried, Stay! What folly is this? Cannot you see there is a spider's web spun across the opening? How could anyone enter this tree without breaking it? Let us spend our time more profitably elsewhere. Kagechika, however, was still suspicious concerning his cousin, and he thrust his bow into the hollow trunk. It almost touched the crouching Yoritomo, when 2 white doves suddenly flew out of the cavity. Alas, exclaimed Kagechika, you are right. Our enemy cannot lay concealed here, for doves and a cobweb would not admit of such a thing. By the timely aid of 2 doves and a spider's web, the great hero Yoritomo made good his escape. And when, in latter years, he became shogun, he caused shrines to be erected to Hachiman, the god of war, in recognition of his deliverance, for the doves of Japan are recognized as the messengers of war, and not of peace, as in the case of the Western countries. So this one is letting you know that in our country, doves are a symbol of peace. In the Japanese culture, doves are messengers of war. So the doves actually saved his life by coming out of that hollow tree when he was just about to be discovered. So now I'd like you to let me know if you like these kinds of readings, or if there is some other kinds of things, because I also enjoy reading poetry. If you like, there are other things. We could do some just chatting streams if you would like. I want to make this more enjoyable for my viewership, so that you will enjoy it more. I hope that everyone is having a wonderful week and that you will have a blessed weekend. And as everyone knows, tomorrow is Valentine's Day, so I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Whether you have a significant other or not, you can still celebrate Valentine's Day. I don't know what is going on with my avatar. She's like glitching out here, so I'm sorry about that. But it's important to love yourself. You are not defined by whether or not you are in a relationship. So if you are in a relationship, I hope that you have a wonderful romantic Valentine's Day. If you are single, I hope that you have a wonderful Valentine's Day as well. Take that time to show some love to yourself. Appreciate your qualities and what makes you such a special, wonderful person. The world needs more positivity in it. We all need to be more accepting of one another, no matter where we are from. Just because we may have differences or we may believe different things doesn't mean that one always has to be right and one always has to be wrong. We don't have to agree with each other's beliefs. Just respect everybody's, ability to have their own beliefs and their right to have their own thoughts, their own beliefs. Just because you are respecting their right to have their own thoughts and beliefs does not mean that you have to agree with them, but you do have to be respectful. If you don't agree, that's fine. Just agree to disagree. You don't have to be nasty to one another. You don't have to try to say, no, you're wrong, I'm right, because depending on your culture and what your values are from wherever you are from, can greatly influence what you think, what you feel, what your value set is, and what is and is not acceptable. So it is not for us to judge others. We just need to love one another. We need more positivity in the world. Now, I will be streaming Eastern Exorcist on Saturday at 12:30. I hope that you will stop by. I look forward to every time people come to my streams. And as always, I appreciate everyone who stopped by here tonight. Again, I want to thank you for coming by. I hope you have a wonderful night and a wonderful rest of your week and a great weekend. Stay positive and happy Valentine's Day.